Thank you to those that have joined the webinar early. We will be getting started promptly at 4:15 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining. We will get started shortly here. Hi, Paul.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we certainly can. We can see you as well. So I will just go ahead and read the introductory statement and we can go ahead and proceed. Hello, this is Barrett with RedChip Companies. Thank you for joining today's event with ASP Isotopes, which trades on the Nasdaq under the ticker ASPI. With us today, we have Paul Mann, Chairman of the Board, Chief Executive Officer, and Chief Financial Officer of ASP Isotopes. We will begin with a brief presentation in a moment, and then we'll open up the event for a Q&A. I will keep everyone's lines muted throughout the presentation.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Paul.
Great.
I'll keep everyone's lines muted throughout the presentation. Users may ask a question at any time by using the Q&A tool at the bottom of the Zoom window. Now, before we begin, please allow me to read the Safe Harbor Statement. This call may contain forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. All statements pertaining to future financial and/or operating results, along with other statements about the future expectations, beliefs, goals, plans, or prospects expressed by management, constitute forward-looking statements. Any statements that are not historical fact should also be considered forward-looking statements. Of course, forward-looking statements involve risks and uncertainties. With that said, I will now turn the call over to Paul. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for your time. And quick question: Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. If you go to the View tab, you should be able to make that full screen, Paul.
Normally I hit the bottom right, but I can't see a bottom right now.
Or perhaps the slideshow tab.
There we go. Got it. Perfect. Well done. Thank you. Okay, great. So just a couple of forward-looking statements. I think you've read these carefully before we start. So first of all, what is ASP Isotopes? So we're a technology-driven company, and we have a very low-cost way, an environmentally friendly way of enriching isotopes. Our plants are very small in footprint. They're modular in design. The capital we need to build a plant is de minimis compared to our peers. We're very quick to build plants as well. Isotopes are interesting right now as well because there are a number of supply-side pressures on the industry. We'll discuss in a moment. At the same time, there's a number of emerging growth opportunities as well, which the current producers are unable to supply. First of all, what are isotopes? So when you dig something out of the ground, a metal or a liquid or anything, they're typically defined by the number of protons in the nucleus, and that defines the chemical element. But they have different numbers of neutrons, and so when you dig molybdenum out of the ground, there are 7 isotopes of molybdenum, and they all have different number of neutrons, different masses, and chemically they're identical, but physically they have different properties, and we can use those isotopes to do certain physical things that we find useful to help many areas of society. So if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see a picture of M&Ms. Here you're separating out the orange, the greens, and the blues. What we do is we separate out the isotopes by mass, similar to this. So when you dig molybdenum out of the ground, there's about 9.5% of it is MO100. We aim to enrich it up to 95%. And then we can use it for very specialist applications. So what are isotopes used in today's markets? Well, it's a lot of isotopes used in medical diagnostic imaging, treating various diseases. Obviously, green nuclear energy, uranium's used there. Lots of different kind of areas in today's society. And going forwards, there are a number of new applications where these isotopes will be used, such as quantum computing, advanced medical therapies, space travel, and satellites and so forth. So they're used every day today, and a lot of new applications arriving quite soon. So why are isotopes interesting right now? So let's start on the supply side. After all, any material depends upon the supply-demand balance. From the supply side, take one isotope, for example, molybdenum-100, molybdenum-99. 9 out of the 10 reactors that currently produce the entire global supply are expected to stop production in the next 10 years. That's going to put a huge supply side squeeze on the industry. In addition to that, Russia has historically been the largest supplier of isotopes to the world. Recent geopolitical events mean that purchasers of isotopes are reevaluating who they're buying, who and where they're buying their isotopes from. Our facilities are ideal to smaller enrichment facilities that can be placed next to the customer's need, and that's quite important. The other interesting thing is the growth in demand. Obviously, it's supply and demand. Historically, isotopes have grown at like a 4 to 5% growth rate per year. That's in line with average, healthcare spending. But right now, there are a number of new isotopes that are going to emerge over the next sort of 3 to 5 years that are going to drive the technologies of the future. So there's lots of healthcare innovation that's happening right now. So molybdenum-100, zinc-68, ytterbium-176, all these isotopes are used in de minimis amounts right now, but they're going to be huge drivers of the healthcare market in 5 to 10 years' time. Carbon-14 has historically been sourced from a single supplier in Russia. That's no longer available. We can supply that isotope right now. Quantum computing will not happen without silicon-28. It simply isn't possible. We can enrich silicon-28 to extremely high levels of purity. We're talking to a number of potential customers right now. And then, energy of the future, there's going to be a requirement for HALEU, as well as other isotopes like lithium-6, deuterium, and chlorine-37. Again, there's no Western producer of any of those isotopes. And our technology is perfectly designed to produce those isotopes. So here's our roadmap of isotopes. Right now, today, we have a facility that can produce silicon-28 and carbon-14. By the end of the year, I think we'll have a bigger facility that can do a lot more isotopes, including molybdenum-100 and molybdenum-98. If you look down this list, there's a lot of isotopes where we're in active discussions with potential commercial partners who need isotopes as soon as possible. So our first isotope, let's talk about molybdenum-100. So molybdenum-100 is currently produced in 10 nuclear reactors around the world. Actually, molybdenum-99 is produced in 10 nuclear reactors around the world. 9 of those 10 are shutting down between now and the end of the decade, or are scheduled to shut down. That's going to put a huge supply side squeeze on the industry. You can turn molybdenum-100 into moly-99 or technetium-99, a sister product, very, very easily. Moly-99 is a $3.5 billion market, and we'd like to think we're going to take a large share of that market over the next 5 or 10 years or so. We're currently building a plant in Pretoria, South Africa. That plant will be complete, fairly soon, and it'll be producing commercial product. I think silicon-28 is another really interesting isotope that we're poised to produce fairly soon, and we've got a lot of discussions with large international companies who need this product. When you think about silicon-28, there's 3 isotopes of silicon-28. The 29 isotope stops the current flowing through the semiconductor. If we can remove that, the semiconductor is thousands of times more powerful. So we can produce silicon-28 to 99.995% enrichment. That'll allow advanced microchips to be produced, including those that can process quantum computing in qubits. And I say we're having many discussions with customers who need that product right now. And finally, carbon-14 is a near-term priority for the company. We have a carbon-14 plant that we expect to start operations really in the next short period of time. It'll be able to supply the entire world's supply or world's demand of carbon-14. Carbon-14 has historically been supplied purely by the Russians. It's used as a tracer in pharmaceuticals, agrochemicals, and we intend to launch our plant in June 2023. And this will generate substantial amounts of free cash flow very quickly. I guess other longer term isotopes that are interesting, uranium is interesting. It's very obvious that in order to meet climate goals in 2050, one is going to need more nuclear power. Many countries are embracing nuclear power right now, including those shown down the right-hand side of the slide. It's pretty much needed universally. It's interesting that Russia is responsible for about 40% of global uranium enrichment. USA imports about 95% of its uranium requirements. And again, there's a lot of discussions going on as to where this uranium is going to come from in the future. So the future of nuclear energy is probably the small modular reactor, the SMR. Many companies such as X Energy and TerraPower are developing SMRs. These SMRs are basically like thinking about a conveyor belt or a mass manufacturing a nuclear reactor. They're much smaller. Traditional nuclear reactors, you can put them in a small city or small town or power that small town. It's very, very cheap to build. There's a levelized cost of energy of 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour anywhere in the world. The problem is they need slightly higher grade uranium, 19.75% rather than 5%. And that's a problem because no one in the West can produce it. We believe we can. It's a big push right now from the US government for this, about $700 million in the Inflation Reduction Act to help finance and fund companies to produce HALEU or high affinity low enriched uranium. We'd like to partner this with a partner and see if we can be part of the solution to this problem. This slide shows a few other isotopes where we're receiving inbound calls on what we can do. Zinc-68 is going to be very important in 10 years' time. It's a very important isotope for radiodiagnostics in a PET scan. Ytterbium-176 is becoming a clear leader in oncology treatments. We've got a number of discussions with customers about being able to produce Ytterbium-176. Chlorine-37, so TerraPower and other companies are trying to produce molten salt reactors. They don't work without chlorine-37. I think we're probably the only Western producer of chlorine-37. And lithium-6 will be required to enable nuclear fusion next decade. Again, probably the only Western producer capable of producing lithium-6. So this is how our company is set up. We have two subsidiaries, ASPI Isotopes and Enriched Energy. Our feeling is we're going to license the technology or partner with companies in the bigger, more capital eating side of the business. So HALEU, lithium-6, chlorine-37, we're likely partner with companies to produce those. And then all the smaller plants like molybdenum-100, carbon-14, zinc-68, silicon-28, we can build those plants for between $10 and $15 million a piece. Cash-on-cash payback is 2 to 3 years, extremely high gross margin. They're the kind of plants we can build, own, and operate ourselves. So I guess to summarize, we have a proven and proprietary technology platform, very environmentally friendly production of large range of isotopes. We have very favorable long-term market trends, expecting to deliver long-term secular industry growth. Our first two plants are expected to start up this year and should drive considerable free cash flow for the company. And then we've got a huge line of isotopes where there's companies interested in partnering with us or doing business with us, and we're talking to them. So I'll stop there and I'll take any questions.
Thank you. We are now going to open up the call for questions. Participants should indicate that they have a question by using the raise hand tool. I will then enable you to speak. You may also type in your question using the Q&A tool. You have a question here from Mike Harrison. He says, can you please discuss the intellectual property suite around your ASP technologies?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Mike. So we don't have any patents per se on our process, and it's unlikely we'll ever be able to get patents on our process. By filing a patent for our process, we're telling the world how to enrich isotopes, and that's exactly what the Non-Proliferation Council and International Atomic Energy Agency do not want us to do. We may well apply for patents on certain parts of the process. So, for example, our compressors are very unique. We invented them, we designed them. They're critical to part of the process. We may well patent those. We may well patent certain nozzles and certain flow directors that are used as well. But in terms of patenting the whole process, it's unlikely we'll ever do that. Remember, the regulatory constraints we operate in are probably the strictest of any industry out there. You know, everyone entering the plant has to be screened by, you know, the Non-Proliferation Council officials. Everyone's registered as to who's allowed to look at the technology. Only a handful of people are allowed to look at the technology. It's extremely heavily guarded what we do. And so I think we're in a good position regarding IP.
Just a reminder to all attendees, if you do have a question, you can use the raise hand function and I will enable you to speak, or you can type in the question using the Q&A tool at the bottom of your Zoom window. I do have a question from Brandon Carney. He says, in terms of a 6-day Curie, how much molybdenum 100 costs to produce, and how does it compare to molybdenum 99?
Yeah, thanks for that, Brendan. So I'm not going to give any specific numbers right now as to how much it costs us to produce, but I would say we are likely the lowest cost producer in the world by an order of magnitude. And then in terms of how does that compare to the cost of molybdenum 99, you know, I would summarize that China right now imports about $95 million of molybdenum 99 every year. We believe, yeah, we've signed a contract with RedChip, which is essentially the government buyer of stable isotopes to China. They're equivalent to DOE. We signed a contract, a 25-year contract for $27 million a year. And we believe that entire $95 million can be, you know, backed out by the $27 million contract we've signed. So we think we're extremely price competitive. So that's that question. So we've got a question from Nils as well. Can you provide some history on the company and when you got involved? Also, what does the balance sheet look like and what is expected cash burn this year? So, some history of the company. So, I met this company about 3 years ago, and I met the predecessor company, the South African company, about 3 years ago, and they were trying to build a molybdenum 100 plant in South Africa. They ran out of money during the process. Yeah, I've been investing in healthcare for the last 20 years. I immediately recognized the opportunity, the commercial opportunity. So we quickly raised about $4 million between myself and some friends. And then we bid for the asset during bankruptcy process. We were successfully won. Then we raised another $6 million, which allowed us to complete the plant. And the entire investment was predicated purely on molybdenum 100. This is well before Russia invaded Ukraine. Obviously, Russia, the world has changed since then. And the opportunity set has grown exponentially. And so we're very busy both trying to commercialize Moly 100 as well as accept other isotopes. In terms of our balance sheet look like, we haven't filed a 10K, but you can see our 10Q published for the last September 30th numbers, that's on the internet. We raised about $5 million in an IPO last November. So if you add the two together, that should give you an idea of what our balance sheet looks like. In terms of our cash burn this year, we don't spend a lot of money. We've got a very lean management team, very lean structure. So all the money we have will get spent on building plants. Our first plant is almost there; it's almost complete, and that'll start producing free cash flow towards the back end of the year. So hopefully that answers that question.
Here's another question from our YouTube live stream. What potential revenue do you expect in the coming 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so that's a difficult question to answer. We haven't given guidance. I'm not going to give guidance either. A lot of it depends upon timing of contracts, timing of plants. What I would say is that, I've already told you that the $95 million in Moly 99 that we believe China buys can be fully backed out with the $27 million order they placed to us. We're talking to potential customers about silicon-28 to enable quantum computing, zinc-68 to enable diagnostics. These plants are fast to build. We can build a plant in a year. So, I don't want to think about what our revenues can be in the next 1 to 2 years, but in 5 to 10 years, I think they can be extremely substantial. These are big market opportunities, high gross margins. And we're the only non-government Western producer of these isotopes.
And here's a question from Heartland Snyder. How does one get a handle of your cost of production versus other suppliers? How rapidly do you expect your cost of production to decline?
Yeah, so again, that's a difficult question to answer. So let's take, for example, molybdenum-100. I suspect there are only 2 suppliers in the world, ourselves and Russia. The fact that our first plant has got 4.5 times as much interest in the volume as we have capacity suggests that we're very cost competitive. For silicon-28, again, it's not about how our cost compares to others. I don't know if there are any other producers of silicon-28 to a level of 99.995% enrichment, which is what you need for quantum computing. Can we produce it at $200 or $300 a gram? Absolutely, we can. Can we charge $500 or $600 a gram? If there's no other producer, the market will pay what the market can bear. So and the same with zinc-68, chlorine-37. A lot of these isotopes, it's not about how much can we produce them for, it's about how much can other people produce them for, if they can even produce them. And again, I think the fact that we've had so many incoming calls from other from potential customers suggests that it's likely we're the only non-Russian producer of these isotopes.
Paul, I am not seeing any other questions in the queue. If you would just like to wrap this up with an essential value proposition.
Yeah, so thanks for your interest this afternoon, or actually this evening for me. I'm in South Africa. Thanks for your interest. So we're a high growth, high tech, fast company, right on the verge of our first plants coming into commercial production. We have a huge level of interest from our customers, and we expect to generate substantial amounts of free cash flow and generate very attractive returns for investors over the years. And hopefully that piques your interest. If you've got any questions, feel free to contact me.
For more information on ASP isotopes, reach us at 1-800-RedChip. That's 1-800-733-2447. You can also email us at aspi@redchip.com. Please use RedChip's investor information page for ASP isotopes, aspiinfo.com. There you can view and download the investor presentation, as well as the fact sheet, and sign up for news alerts. Please also be sure to visit aspiisotopes.com. Thanks again, participants, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Have a good evening.